If the Falcons are looking for an athletic linebacker on day 2 of the draft to replace Kaden Elliss, well, they got plenty of options.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the solar system. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Now, if you don't know me, I'm your humble host, Aaron Freeman, aka Sirius Black. Been covering the Atlanta Falcons for 2 decades, formerly at falcons.com, RIP. Still going strong here on Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. And on today's daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, we were talking about another off-field incident involving a Falcons coach this time instead of a player. We'll get into some of the cornerbacks that shined at the combine on Friday. And we'll start off talking about some of these day 2 linebackers that tested really well on Thursday at the combine. And it's worth noting because we know that Jeff Ulbrich, the Falcons defensive coordinator, former NFL linebacker, former linebackers coach, the through line throughout his time as a coach, he's always seemed to coach and covet athletes at the linebacker position, going back to his days over a decade ago at UCLA, where he coached players like Anthony Barr and Miles Jack and Eric Kendricks, to his days in Atlanta with notably Deion Jones and Foye Oluokun, and then to New York with Quincy Williams and Jamie Sherwood. And so we always talk about with Jeff Ulbrich, if and when they add linebackers to this group, they're going to look at athletes, right? And there's a couple of day 2 linebackers based off of the consensus rankings that are projected to go somewhere between rounds 2 and 3 that tested really well on Thursday. And I think they potentially are options for the Falcons, particularly at pick 48 as that first selection, especially in a world where the Falcons don't re-sign Kaden Elliss, and maybe that pushes up that priority to fill that role in round 2 up a little bit. But the 4 names that really jump out are Anthony Hill Jr. of Texas, Jake Golday of Cincinnati, Jacob Rodriguez of Texas Texas Tech, and Kyle Lewis of Pittsburgh. And when I looked back at the 7 linebackers that the teams Jeff Ulbrich has coached in the NFL have drafted during his time, obviously 5 with the Falcons, Deion Jones, Devondre Campbell, Duke Riley, Michael Walker, and Foye Oluokun, 2 with the Jets, Jamie Sherwood, and Zaire Bond. I looked at their averages in terms of height, weight, arm length, 40 time, 10-yard split, vertical jump, broad jump, 3-cone, short shuttle, to sort of see, okay, what is the typical athlete that Jeff Ulbrich teams like to covet, and sort of which of these linebackers check those boxes. And those 4 guys I just mentioned did check those boxes. And for those of you that want to know the average was roughly 6'2", 228 pounds, 32 3/4 inch arms, 4'5", 840, 1.6 10-yard split, 35-inch vertical, a 10-1 broad jump or 121-inch broad jump, a 7.04 3-cone, and a 4.28 short shuttle. And Anthony Hill of Texas checked pretty much all of those boxes, with the exception of the agilities where he did not participate on Thursday night, running the 3-cone in the short shuttle, but hit those average benchmarks pretty well. And then Jacob Rodriguez checked all the boxes pretty much except for arm length, where he had sub 31-inch arms, just under 31 inches in terms of his arm length. Jake Golday checked pretty much all the boxes except for the 40 time, where he ran a 4.62 instead of a 4.57. I'm sorry. And then his short shuttle was a little slower than the average, with a 4.34 instead of a 4.28. I'm sorry. And then Kyle Lewis checked all the athletic boxes, but just was a little undersized, coming in at 6 foot, 221 pounds, and 31-inch arms for him in terms of the frame and whatnot. But we've seen it, Jamie Sherwood was drafted as a 216-pound safety linebacker convert. And so it wouldn't shock me if, the Falcons looked at Kyle Lewis, who a lot of people I think Bucky Brooks has Kyle Lewis in his top 5 safety rankings. And I've seen other people talk about him being more of a safety than a true linebacker. But it wouldn't shock me if the Falcons drafted him with the idea that he could be another sort of Jamie and Sherwood type of player that can make that successful conversion. Divine Diablo being another safety linebacker convert and whatnot. Now, and it's noted that Lewis and Rodriguez were at the Senior Bowl, and we talked about earlier where Ian Cunningham comes from the Bears, and they like to draft a lot of Senior Bowl guys across the 4 years that Ian Cunningham was there in Chicago. Now, there's another day 2 guy in terms of Josiah Trotter of Missouri, who based off of the consensus rankings, but he didn't test besides the bench, I believe. And the Trotter family, he's the son of Jeremiah Trotter, and his older brother, Jeremiah Jr., was drafted by the Eagles, I believe, last year out of Clemson. But, they're not necessarily known, or at least the sons are not necessarily known of being super athletes. So it's not surprising that Josiah was like, oh, I'll wait for my pro day. But another linebacker that tested reasonably well is Michigan edge / linebacker Jayshon Barham. We talked about him 2 weeks ago on the Mock Draft Monday, where Josh Kendall of The Athletic had him going to the Falcons in his mock I think in round 6, right? But he brings a little bit more size than some of these other linebackers, measuring at 6'3.5", 240 pounds, having the arm length 32 plus inches, but ran like a 4.6, 440, a 1.61 10-yard split, 33 inch vertical, and a 10.3 broad jump, which, is close to and it hits several of those benchmarks that we're talking about. He played, if you missed that episode where we broke him down, he played edge this past year at Michigan after 3 years playing off-ball linebacker at both Michigan and Maryland. And we talked about him as a day 3 guy. I don't know if he's going to last around 6, but, I think he's certainly probably still in the mix at day 3, probably has a little bit more pass rushing upside than some of these other linebackers, especially if the Falcons are looking for someone that has a little closer to Kaden Ellis' skill set, although Jacob Rodriguez and Anthony Hill and Jake Golday, I do believe, have pretty productive career. No, maybe not Golday, but Rodriguez and Hill, I think, have pretty productive careers as pass rushers at the collegiate level. But, and Falcons still want to embrace that 5-man pass rush in a world without Kaden Ellis, then, some of these guys do make sense. But we heard Jeff Ulbrich talk about how, if the Falcons are going to replace Kaden Ellis, who is an impending free agent, and it's, to me, kind of a toss-up at this point in time whether he'll be back, he said we would need to do so with multiple players, right? And so that could be a veteran free agent. That could be one of the aforementioned guys on day 2 of the draft, like a Jacob Rodriguez. That could be, circling back to that position again on day 3 and picking up a guy like Barham or whatever, and hoping that you can get sort of, 3 different skill sets and hopefully combine them into one, as Jeff Ulbrich was implying when it came to finding potential replacements for Kaden Ellis. And certainly, that's still a strategy that even works, even if that free agent that you get in free agency is Kaden Ellis, by bringing him back. It still makes a ton of sense for the Falcons, given Ellis's age, to, invest in his replacements in this year's draft. But you do wonder if that would be a round 2 option if Ellis is back in the fold, and maybe that would just wait and they would take a flyer on 2 developmental guys and on day 3. So, I've said the Falcons need to add 3 linebackers this offseason, regardless of what happens if Kaden Ellis. So Kaden Ellis could be one of those 3 that they add this offseason, but I certainly think there should be significant investment in this linebacker core to take advantage of what is widely considered to be the strongest linebacker draft class in like over a decade. So we'll see if the Falcons can find those investments in this draft class. But certainly if we're looking for premium athletes at the top of the draft, obviously Sonny Styles takes the cake. And we mentioned Sonny Styles on an episode 2 days ago, whenever it was, basically like if, the Falcons still had that first round pick, he would be the guy that we probably be coveting. And then he went out and blew out the combine within like 24 hours of that episode posting. And it's like, yep, I told you. But like, it's to the point where I don't even know if he's going to be there at 13 at this point in time, where a lot of mock drafts had him, I think, going 15 to the Bucs And now it's like I've seen a lot of mock drafts like, oh, he's going 7 to Washington. He's the Bobby Wagner replacement. So we'll see how that all goes. But we'll be looking at Sonny Styles with Envious. And yes, I will be pushing this agenda all off season long, where I'm like, well, we could have had Sonny Styles. And I know everybody's gonna be like, well, we got James Pierce. And I'm like, well, we could have had another pass rusher in 2024 that's just as good, if not better, than James Pierce. But we're not going to go down that road, at least not on today's episode. But we will go down the road of talking about cornerbacks and who shined, who hit those 40-yard dash benchmarks, as well as those arm length benchmarks that we all covet here in Atlanta. And we'll break that down as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So if you've ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is now going to make that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. If you use a profit boost, any profit boost on your profit boost on any NBA future, you'll be automatically entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, hotels, flights, tickets, the whole experience. I don't know about the hotels. We'll find out. I got to do some more digging on the FanDuel. Are they going to pay for my hotel? All right. But if you're looking at the board and you are thinking of which team can make that deep run to the conference title or to the championship, it's the perfect time to lock it in, because coming off the All-Star break, it adds an extra layer to excitement to every game down the stretch. And now not only can your pick win you cash, but it can also send you to the finals. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you to all the everydayers that make Locked On Falcons their first listen each and every day. You are the reason why Locked On is the #1 sports podcast network in the solar system. And the offseason doesn't exist for the everydayer, especially if you are a member of the Everydayer Club. You can join the offseason discussion on the Falcons year-round in the exclusive Discord channel for Locked On, as well as get every episode ad-free. Head on over to lockedonfalcons.supercast.com, the link in the description below, to find out more. So let's talk corners, right? And we got some really explosive corners this year, like a lot of jumpers. Like I think there was like 12 corners hit like 39 or higher in terms of their vertical jumps this year. And 39 inches would be basically like 82nd percentile or above for the cornerback position. And we broke down earlier this week sort of the cornerback tiers, looking at different, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 guys that could be in the mix for the Falcons in that second round, possibly third round picks, based off of the consensus rankings. And, we got 2 guys in that tier 3 level that tested in terms of the explosiveness. Chris Johnson of San Diego State ran a 4.4, 0.40 officially, had a 10.6 broad jump. D'Angelo Pons had the highest vertical jump of anybody, matching Sonny Styles. Did it at like 60 pounds less, but 43.5-inch vertical jump for D'Angelo Pons out of Indiana, showcasing that athleticism. And then you had some tier 4 guys, Chandler Rivers of Duke, 4.40, 40, 130, 10.10 broad jump. Devin Moore out of Florida, measuring at 6'3", 31+ inch arms, 4.50, 40, not necessarily as fast as the other guys, but, considering he's a little bit bigger, that aerodynamicness, slows him down a little bit, but that's a good time for a guy with his size, 4.50. And then we got, some explosiveness from the tier 2 guys. Brandon Cisse of South Carolina, 41-inch vertical, 10.11 broad jump. Colton Hood of Tennessee, 40.5-inch vertical, 10.5 broad jump. And, we want to give a shout out to Colton Hood and Chris Johnson specifically, because both of these guys went down to Mobile to compete in the Senior Bowl. Both of these guys went through the full round of testing here in Indianapolis. And they were among the only ones that did that in the top 3 tiers when we broke them down of the 9 cornerbacks that were in the top 3 tiers. The first round guys, Jermod McCoy of Tennessee and Mansour Delane of, LSU, were too scared to compete and just completely sat out all of the combine. Didn't even do the on-field drills. At least Avion Terrell did the on-field drills. Pons obviously did the vertical jump in the on-field drills. Cisse did some of the jumps and whatnot. But, Keith Abney, Arizona State, too scared to compete. Cowards, all of them. No, I'm kidding. It's a running joke for those of you that don't understand. When guys skip out on the Senior Bowl or skip out on the Combine, I'm always like, oh, they're too scared to compete. They're a bunch of cowards, all that sort of stuff. But it's been a running joke I've been having since like 2020, right before COVID hit, when guys were opting out of this of the Combine and whatnot. Chase Young comes to mind. But that's just funny to me. But non-jokes aside, it is notable to me, especially like the cornerback position, where you want that competitive edge. And it's just like, I get it. Like, we get why guys opt out, but it's just like, come on, man. Like, if you're fast, you're fast. Run fast. Go out there and show it's a fast track. But, it is what it is. But more importantly, when we talked about this cornerback group and sort of what we cared about 40s and arm length, right? And some of the guys that we weren't putting in our top 4 tiers that were projected to be, maybe top 75 picks in those top 4 tiers, but or more like tier 5 guys that were in the mix, maybe more so in the top 100, 3rd round, maybe 4th round guys. A lot of guys that were some of the bigger corners that we were looking for, right? Because those first few tiers were, guys that had average size, maybe some of the smaller corners, maybe some more nickel guys like Chandler Rivers, Keontae Scott out of Miami, etc. But then that tier 5 was really where all the big guys were. And we bring that up just because if you haven't been paying attention to this podcast for the last, year and a half, we've been pushing for getting more size in the Falcons cornerback room, because it's basically AJ Terrell. And AJ Terrell is above average size for a cornerback. He would not qualify as a big corner, but compared to the rest of the Falcons cornerback room, AJ Terrell is he's like Mike Evans standing next to a normal human being. He's like, Wimby compared to the rest of the Falcons quarterback group. But, we do have some size in terms of that tier 5 that maybe some of these guys might move up into tier 4, right? And maybe in the mix, particularly in round 3. But Daylen Everette out of Georgia, 6'1", nearly 32-inch arms, 4'3", 840. Takario Davis out of Washington, 6'4", 33-plus inch arms, 4'4", 140. Malik Muhammad, Texas, 6 foot, 32-plus inch arms, 4'4", 40. 10 broad jump. Davison Igbinosun of Ohio State, 6'2", 33-inch arms, 4'5". I'm not even a fan of Davison Igbinosun, but this man is willing to compete. And so that's a check mark in his box. Senior Bowl and Combine. We love to see it. Ephesians Prysock, Takario's teammate at Washington, 6'3", 33-plus inch arms, 4'4", 540. Julian Neal of Arkansas, another Senior Bowl guy, 6'2", 32 and 5/8 inch arms, 40-inch vertical, and 11'2" broad jump. Charles Deming, Stephen F. Austin, another Senior Bowl guy, 6'1", 32-inch arms, 4'4", 140, 42-inch vertical, and 11 even broad jump. So we got some guys that are explosive, big and explosive, big, long, and explosive. Don't we love to see it? Pause, right? In terms of what we're looking for at the cornerback position. And so plenty of options for the Falcons, especially if we're looking at a combination of linebacker in round 2, cornerback in round 3. Some of those guys I just named, if the Falcons are in the market for a big corner on the outside, there are plenty of options that certainly check the size and explosiveness boxes at that cornerback position. So, we could be talking about any one number of these guys being in the mix for the Falcons in round 2, and the sheer number of these guys, more importantly, right? The amount of these guys that are available potentially with some of these selections means that, hey, it creates more opportunities for the Falcons to maybe slide back 5 or 10 spots in round 2 or round 3, pick up some of those late round picks, as we know Ian Cunningham is looking to do, and add some more day 3 picks that they can use to add some more depth at some other areas of need and whatnot. So, this draft class is, we would love to have that first round pick, of course, but certainly I think that Ian Cunningham has a lot to work with based off of the depth of this draft class at some of the key positions. But we will move on from the Combine and talk about the Falcons coaching staff. We got another hire on Friday, but we also got a firing on Friday, and another off-field incident involving a Falcon, this time a coach, an ugly off-field incident, and we'll break that down as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So it is draft season. And yes, we are talking combine, but today we are talking about the 5-hour energy flavor draft, breaking down those tasty flavors, which are the best, which are the sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take that top spot. 5-hour energy has a wide variety of flavors, something for everyone. When I used to stroll into a gas station in the mornings before my day job and grab that 5-hour energy, it was just like berry and grape flavors, and those are two classics. But, they've leveled up in the year since with 17 flavors. Peach mango is now my number one prospect with its sweet tropical flavor, and I definitely want to try. I'm intrigued by, the upside of the confetti craze flavor, that sweet birthday cake inspired flavor with the buttery, freshly baked confetti cake, that sweet vanilla frosting, and that sprinkle of sweetness in every sip. So who's number one on your board? Find your new favorite flavor of 5-hour energy shots, now available at 5hourenergy.com and Amazon. So the Falcons dismissed assistant defensive line coach LaTroy Lewis, who they just hired earlier this month. It was news broke Thursday night around 6:30 p.m., I think, when it first came out, with Justin Spiro of Darko State News on Twitter, broke down some heinous sexual assault allegations against Lewis, from a woman when he was a graduate assistant at the University of Michigan back in 2024. And it didn't take long for the Falcons to learn this news and to fire LaTroy Lewis. He was fired as of like 1:30 on Friday, so about 19 hours after that story first broke. Lewis was hired again at the beginning of the month to be the assistant D-line coach alongside Nate Ollie. Lewis played at Tennessee when Nate Ollie was a graduate assistant at Tennessee back in 2017. And it's just another, rough black eye for the Falcons this offseason. It's been a tough start to the Falcons offseason, right, where you get another incident involving an ugly off-field incident, allegedly, right? Obviously, we had the earlier situation this month, allegedly, with James Pierce Jr. and the domestic violence allegations against him, and he was charged for that. Lewis is currently under investigation by local police in Ann Arbor, Michigan, from that incident. So we'll see what's what on that. But given the allegations, the Falcons were not going to stand by some low-level assistant, especially one that's only been on the job for 2 weeks. And again, it goes back to a conversation we had about James Pierce, where when we talked about, I don't think the Falcons are going to move off of James Pierce because of, the investment they already made, the production he already made. But that just goes to show the difference how this league works, where it's like, if you're a good player, they will be like, we'll let the legal process play out. If you're not, and, that would apply for a low-level assistant like LaTroy Lewis, they are not going to, give you the benefit of the doubt when it comes to those things. And understandably why they would not give you the benefit of the doubt. Again, maybe you can debate whether it's understandable when you're a player of a certain caliber, whether they should give you that benefit of the doubt, but that's not what we're going to be talking about today. So in more positive news, the Falcons did find their Mike Rutenberg replacement. If you forget, Rutenberg was the Falcons defensive pass game coordinator, followed Jeff Ulbrich from the New York Jets, became the Browns defensive coordinator this offseason, earlier this month. And they replaced him with former Cardinals defensive backs coach Patrick Toney. He was added to that role today on Friday. As far as I know, I'm not aware of any connections between Toney and anybody currently on the Falcons defensive staff. So, the presumption is that, the Falcons hired Toney because of the good work that he did in Arizona the last couple of years. And given that, Arizona had a lot of successful young cornerbacks developing over the last couple of years, it speaks to the job that he did with guys like Garrett Williams and who was the other guy? I'm blanking on it. I'm going off the top of the dome. It doesn't matter. Once we get off air, it's, if anybody you play that game Weddle, that's Wordle for NFL players, you understand my frustration when it's like, who is that guy that plays for that team? But anyway, so hopefully Patrick Toney will be able to do many of the things that Mike Rutenberg did and allow the Falcons to continue their excellent pass defense from a year ago, which was the strength of their defense last year. So hopefully, that will be the case. But hopefully the Falcons will get some wins this offseason, starting on March 9th when the legal tampering period opens up. And we'll get some PR wins just from some good news with the Falcons hiring or, signing some good players, re-signing some good players. And we just can end it's been the last 30 days have been tough. It's been a tough 30 days for the Falcons. Not too many positive headlines involving the Atlanta Falcons, especially off the field. So hopefully we'll get some PR wins and we can no more, please, no more of these stories. So that's going to do it for us here, guys. We'll be back with more combine coverage this weekend. We got quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs working out on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. And then, so that will be what's in store for you. More coverage of that. And of course, I don't know what our next episode is going to be, but we'll see. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss that episode, whatever it is. I say I don't know what my next episode is going to be, if we're going to have another episode between now and Saturday evening on YouTube. So we'll see. That's basically what it is. But because we've been doing 2 a day for like 10 days. So we might take a break for once so I can hang out with people and be social on Friday night. But you guys don't care about that stuff. So we'll see. But anyway, check out Locked On Falcons. Check out Locked On NFL. Check out Locked On NFL Draft. Check out Locked On NFL Scouting for complete combine coverage across the Locked On Podcast Network. And, of course, if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Falcons ad-free. Plus, members-only Discord access and so much more. Head on over to the link in the description below to find out at lockedonfalcons.supercast.com. It's just $5 a month or $50 a year, as well as you get some sweet Locked On NFL merch as well. So it's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.